Hi, I'm Brian. Welcome to Autogefühl. Well, you've heard of the GTI, you've heard of the GTD, and now there's a GTE. You might be thinking, but isn't there already an e-Golf? The answer is yes, there absolutely is, but this is a hybrid. So we have an electric engine working alongside a petrol one. We've come to Austria to have a look and see what we think of it, and where better than an alpine meadow to come and find out if the Golf GTE is as good as it's supposed to be. So you might wonder, why the GTE? We all know that hybrid cars are stable, reliable. We expect a little bit more from a GT, and I think that that's why they've done it. A lot of the styling details carry over from the rest of the GT range. You can see almost an exact copy of the GTI's stripe through the lights, but instead of red, obviously we have Volkswagen's signature blue, telling you that it's an efficiency thing. We've got the same honeycomb grille. We have the not really air intakes, and here, instead of having a two-dimensional badge which covers up the sensors, we have a three-dimensional one which houses the recharge point. The sporty feeling continues on through the side. You can see here we have a GTE logo, we have nice detailing on the stripping on the bottom, and although the car comes standard with 16-inch alloys, here we have the 18-inch. They've gone to a lot of trouble to make sure that you know, just because it's a hybrid, it's not suffering from a lack of power. As we come through the car, you can see that sporty styling is continued. We have, as an optional extra, dark tinted rear windows, and the spoiler through the sides really adds to the dynamic appearance of the side of the car. At the rear, more of that optional tinting on the window, a very straightforward flat back, the logo, the GTE once again, and twin mounted chrome exhaust pipes. If this looks a little bit lacking in individual character, that's clearly because Volkswagen want the GT line to all have the same hallmark look and feel. For what it's worth, I like it. I think it's important that the car should look dynamic and not too boring. I think that's going to help them with sales. At 4.26 meters in length, or 14 feet, that might sound a little bit similar to fans of the others of the Golf range. Well, it is. But that leaves a little bit of a mystery, doesn't it? Where did the battery go? Well, I know what you're thinking. They must have put it in here, right? Let's have a look. Well, on the face of it, that looks really very similar to what you get from the GTI. But I can tell you it's only 272 litres of space, where the Golf GTI is 380. So what's happened then? Well, they've managed to hide the battery away underneath the rear seats. But that has meant that something else has had to move. And this is where we now find the fuel tank. But I don't think 272 litres is that bad of a deal for a hybrid car, especially when you consider if you fold down the rear seats, you get over 1100 litres of load room. So I think that's probably more than enough space for anything you could really expect to put in a Golf anyway. Here's the key, and as with the GTI, we have a discrete GTE on the back just to help distinguish it. Let's have a look inside. Well, that's reassuring. It's exactly what you would expect. The standard tartan for the GTI, but here with a blue stripe accenting instead of the red. The interior looks very much exactly as you would expect. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. After all, there's a reason why the Golf is as popular and as successful as it is. So if the formula works, why change it? Coming over to the door, exactly with the rest of the family, we have the inlaid strip, chrome effect, open, window mirror controls, windows, and then a decent sized pocket. Let's have a seat and find out how it feels. Well, I don't think it's going to come as a massive surprise to you to learn that it's exactly as you would expect it to feel. That is to say, it's a Golf. So the seat is comfortable, it's well positioned. The seat that comes with this model is manual. I have bolsters at the sides to hold me in place and at the base too. I would say the first impression is nice. Pricing for the GTE starts off at €36,900. So all this technology does not come cheap. And don't forget, that's the base price. Anything extra you want has to be put on board. But for that money, you get a very nicely laid out car. Now, I don't want to go on too much about it because it is exactly as you would expect from the Golf. Funnily enough though, I will tell you, this soft touch dashboard, you will know if you watched my review of the GTI, I hated in the GTI, it just didn't feel right to me. Bizarrely, in the GTE, I don't mind it at all. It seems to suit the style of car better to me, and I think that's an interesting point about the Golfs in general. If you're going to homogenize the style right across the line, there will be details and features that work well in some cars and not so well in others. I like the adaptation that they've made to the seat in order to make it more relevant to the car. This dashboard for me works well in this car, and the whole layout looks nice. It's not too sporty, but it's agile enough. We have a stitched leather steering wheel. That's obviously intentional to make the car feel a little bit more sporty in the drive. A chrome finish gear stick. The car only is available as a 6-speed DSG, so you have no option there, but you do have Tiptronic gear changing if you want to add a little bit more excitement. On this car, we have a fully digital cockpit, which will give you all the information you could ever want to know about hybrid engines' performance, and we have the largest infotainment screen that is optional on this car. We'll tell you more about that in just a minute. I'm 5'10" or 178 centimeters, so as you can see, there's plenty of room at the top. Now, I actually have a longer torso than you might imagine, so a 6-foot person is going to fit more than comfortably in this car, but don't forget, if you get the optional panoramic roof, you're going to lose out on a little bit of space. Let's see what happens when we switch the car on. As you would expect with a hybrid, there is more than sufficient information that you could ever want available through the screen, and you select how much of that you do or don't want to see. Generally, it will tell you how much charge the battery has, what the purely electric range is, and obviously fuel, speed and revs. If we look down slightly lower, you can see that we have options to choose between GTE mode, that's hybrid, or purely electric mode. The display will tell us how far we can travel purely on batteries, and at the moment that's 38 kilometers. If you put it in hybrid mode, the car takes all of the decisions away and effortlessly controls what fuel source you use and when you use it. Excuse me, very hot. So I think Volkswagen have put a lot of time and effort into listening to customer feedback. Everything in terms of how the battery interacts with the regular petrol engine is changeable and adjustable from the customer's point of view. What they've understood is that most customers really don't want to be bothered by that, and not only that, but the car will make far better, more efficient decisions about its battery usage than you will. So for the vast majority of people, simply putting the car into GTE mode and leaving it alone will deliver you the best response and the best results. But if you're the type of person who really likes to dig into it and thinks, nah, I can do better with that, everything is adjustable through the menus. We have here the largest infotainment system, which you know from the other models. We do often ask if we can have lower spec cars because not everybody buys these upgraded options when they come to purchase the vehicle. But I think the manufacturers often want to show us what the cars are capable of. This is why we often have the top end of the stereo and the displays. But the lower down ones work very well as well. This is set nicely into the dashboard. You can see we have high gloss throughout. That's standard for this car. Again, there's nothing remarkable about this, either good or bad. It fits nicely in with the entire Golf range. It won't bother you and it does its job more than well. Let's take a look in the back. Well, it will come as absolutely no surprise to you whatsoever to learn that there's plenty of legroom back here. Why no surprise? Well, again, it's a Golf, so it's exactly like the other Golfs in that respect. If you have a larger person in front, you can see that you still are going to have more than enough space for comfort back here. And for head height, plenty. So I could sit back here and be very comfortable for a long time, I think. I have my own heating and cooling controls. I don't have a charge point back here, which I think I would have liked, but I do have nice spacious door pockets for all of those toys and other things that people might want to put back here. Let's take a look and see what's powering this thing. Well, there it is. That is not exactly straightforward looking, and it shouldn't be either. What you're looking at right now is a 1.4 litre TSI petrol engine that produces 150 horsepower and an electric motor that produces 75 horsepower. Together, they produce 204 horsepower and 350 Newton meters of torque. That, of course, is the only engine available if you want to get the GTE, and they always come as standard with 6-speed DSG gearbox. So, according to Volkswagen, the GTE will do 0 to 100 in 7.6 seconds. We've just pulled off the Autobahn to get ourselves a nice straight piece of road leading onto it to find out how close we can come to that. Okay, ready? I made that slightly quicker than 7.6, but don't forget there was a slight downwards hill there, so we had a bit of an advantage. Pretty impressive nonetheless. The 204 horsepower of the GTE will power you all the way up to 138 miles per hour or 222 kilometers per hour. A really pretty respectable performance for a hybrid. According to the datasheet, this car should be able to get about 1.7 litres worth of combined fuel efficiency. Well, I think I probably messed up that number quite a lot with my recent sprint, but let's see how the car's performing right now. Well, according to the data, we're currently getting 5.7. Obviously, that's a long way off the 1.7 that we're promised, but don't forget, this is all highway driving, and because of that, we're not really able to take the best advantage of the battery. This is fantastically good type of driving if you want to charge the battery, but we're not really getting the best out of the hybrid mode. Around town, with a 38 kilometer range, you should be able to go to and from the shops without ever even needing to use the petrol engine. But here on the highway, where you really want to make the most of the available 204 combined horsepower, you really want to use the petrol engine as well. The technology involved in a hybrid car, needless to say, is significantly more complicated than a regular petrol or diesel engine. And because of that, it always is a little bit of an issue as to how that's going to affect the drive. You need to know how the systems will interact. Will you notice them interacting? Will it be bothersome or will it be trouble-free? Well, I'm very happy to report in the GTE, it is absolutely trouble-free. The best way I could describe the ride is smooth. And that's really nice. The interchange between electric and petrol really doesn't impact on you at all. Whatever you do, when you start the car, it will always start in electric, and you don't really notice the petrol kick in until you give the car a demand for it. You put your foot down and call upon the power. But when the petrol kicks in, it's effortless. We've now driven about 200 kilometers in very mixed terrain, and they've all been extremely pleasant. Jonas, agree?
Yes.
Excellent. Really, I have nothing but nice things to say about the driving this car. If I was being a little bit picky, I'd say that because it's a GTE, I really want the power fulfillment when I put down my foot. And because of the way the power is delivered through a combination of electric and petrol, when you're off the blocks at the start, it's fantastic. But when you're already at speed, and at the moment I'm at about 110, if I put my foot down now, there's a lot of noise, but an undeniable turbo lag. Obviously, you can't expect the car to behave purely like a GT that you might expect. You have to kind of get used to that and live with it. But there is more than enough. I'll show you that right now. I'm at 100 kilometers per hour. There's a car in front of me. I'm allowed to do 130. Let's see what the overtake's like. A little bit of turbo lag, but really nothing to get bothered about. I don't think you would even notice that if you owned this car and used it in the longer term. And you're always going to be getting much bigger savings on your fuel usage than your friend who bought the GTI. But he is going to have some spare change left in his pocket because his is a lot cheaper than yours was. The full information that's available to you while driving this car is impressive. Of course, they want to make sure that you have all the information at your disposal about how the engine's performing and what it's doing. I don't know how much realistically most people will use that on a day-to-day basis, but it's nice that it's there and available to you if you are interested. I think the most important thing with technology when it's used at this level in the car is that it just gets out of your way so you can get on with driving the car. And I really can tell you in the GTE, that's absolutely how it works. Now, at the moment, we're driving on the Autobahn, and that means long, straight roads and pretty gentle bends. But earlier on, we did a lot of mountain driving, and there I can tell you that you do notice the extra weight. Now, this car clocks in at 1,615 kilos, and that's unladen weight. That is significantly heavier than the GTE, and although you don't notice it at all when you're on highway miles, if you start having some fun on windy roads, you do feel the extra weight. And there's no denying that does have an impact in the drive and handling of the car. But you're not going to spend most of your life driving a GTE round tight mountain roads at good speed. You're going to spend most of them driving around town and driving along the highway, and for those things, you don't notice the weight at all. It actually makes the car sit very nicely on the road, and it's a pleasure to handle. Okay, now I don't want to set the tone for the whole piece, but I'm sure you've heard me mention already that the thing with reviewing Golfs is that they are consistently Golfs. So I'm going to say a little bit about the driving experience, but you have to understand it really is very similar to all the other Golfs. What I absolutely would recommend is if you haven't tried one and you're thinking of it, go try one. You've tried them all. I'm sorry if that sounds a bit unfair, but in terms of the driving position and the experience, they really are all very similar. So that said, here we go. The driving position is good, the seat's extremely comfortable. We know this because we've put more than 6 hours now into driving these cars, and no problems whatsoever. Great road visibility, limited blind spots, good coverage from the mirrors. We have a ton of extra packages on this car and they all work really well, particularly keen on the adjustable cruise control. It's very nice indeed. Lane departure warning is also excellent. The car's a pleasure to drive. It doesn't do anything that either you're not expecting from a Golf in a good or a bad way. They've really done a superb job of managing to make the experience of all of the new Golfs consistent right across the line, which is to say that they are all consistently good. Maybe they're not going to blow your mind, but in an everyday car that I own, honestly, that's the kind of thing I'm looking for. Using the infotainment while you're driving is pretty pain-free. I have to be honest, I miss the old knobs. I know I like this predictive screen approach. I like the way that I have enormous real estate here to view everything I want, and the digital cockpit is nice. But it's still a little bit frustrating when you want to turn down the volume that there isn't just a simple way of doing it. The heating controls, I think finally somebody has understood these need to be tactile, so you can readily access them and adjust the climate control without needing to look at it, and that's nice. I think as the software updates and we update a little bit and we get more used to talking to our cars instead of trying to physically interact with them, these things will all disappear, because voice recognition improves all the time and it's a lot easier to do it that way without being distracted than it can be to look through the menus. But that said, it's nice, it's modern, it works. I have really no complaints. I wasn't particularly convinced by the digital display the first time that I sat in the car, largely because I guess I love those old analog dials, but I've really enjoyed the flexibility of being able to change the display that I have, and they have done a nice job of managing to make it all look right, so nothing really grates on you or offends you while you're looking at your instruments. And as for navigating through the menus, I'm pretty sure you get used to that. So, in summing up, what do I think of the Golf GTE? Well, I think it's a more than worthy addition to the Golf lineup. If what you want is going to be economy and I think the cheapest entrance, then you have the GTD. If you need a little bit more power, you've got the GTI. If you really want the Golf driving experience, you're going to need a Golf R, and if you want kind of the best of all worlds, that's the GTE. It's going to deliver you very good economy over time, but let's not forget, the entrance price is $36,900. Ouch, that's a lot of money, and I think that might be a little bit too big for some people's boots. However, I would imagine that the main customer for this, initially at least, are going to be fleet buyers who are looking to provide their reps with good vehicles that won't put them off. After all, that's what the GT's doing there, and still manage to get the benefit of the economy. The GTE is a much better drive than I was expecting. It's got tons of pick up and go, and it's really pleasant to drive, just like every other Golf. Yes, okay, I love Golfs, that's how it is. But I will admit that I'm more than a little bit pleasantly surprised by this car, and if I had €36,900 sitting around, I just might buy one.